Achilles was born to the sea nymph Thetis and King Peleus. From the moment of his birth, his mother knew his destiny would be extraordinary, but also tragic. To make him invulnerable, Thetis dipped him into the waters of the river Styx, which granted immortality to anyone they touched. However, since she held him by the heel, this part of his body remained unprotected, unknowingly sealing his fate. As a child, Achilles was sent to the wise centaur Chiron, who trained him in the arts of war, medicine, and music. In the mountains of Thessaly, Chiron taught him how to hunt, fight, and endure pain. Under his guidance, Achilles became the most formidable warrior of his generation. To prevent her son from participating in the Trojan War, Thetis hid Achilles in the court of King Lycomedes on the island of Scyros, disguised as a woman among his daughters. However, the cunning Odysseus discovered his true identity by presenting a selection of gifts, jewelry, and weapons. Achilles, unable to resist his warrior nature, chose the weapons, revealing himself. Finally convinced of his destiny, Achilles set off for the Trojan War. Before leaving, his mother Thetis warned him that he could choose between a long life without glory or a short but renowned one. The young hero chose the latter, determined to achieve immortality through his fame in battle. Achilles landed on the shores of Troy at the head of his Myrmidons. With unmatched strength and speed, he decimated the Trojan forces in every battle. His mere presence on the battlefield instilled terror among his enemies, cementing his reputation as the most lethal Greek warrior. During the conflict, Agamemnon, the leader of the Achaeans, took Achilles' slave Briseis from him, an act the young warrior considered an unforgivable insult. Enraged, Achilles nearly killed Agamemnon, but Athena restrained him. In retaliation, Achilles withdrew from the war, refusing to fight. While the Achaeans suffered without their greatest warrior, Achilles remained in his tent, consumed by anger and wounded pride. His men, the Myrmidons, waited without engaging in combat, while Patroclus and other companions tried to persuade him to return to the fight. Desperate to help the Greek army, Patroclus asked to wear Achilles' armor and lead the Myrmidons in his place. On the battlefield, he successfully pushed the Trojans back to their walls, but was ultimately slain by Hector, who took Achilles' armor. Patroclus' death unleashed uncontrollable fury in Achilles. His cries of rage echoed throughout the Greek camp, and his grief transformed into a thirst for vengeance. Nothing could stop him from returning to battle to face Hector and punish the Trojans. Seeing her son's suffering, Thetis went to the god Hephaestus to have new armor forged for him. The divine blacksmith created a magnificent shield, a gleaming helmet, and an impenetrable breastplate. With this divine equipment, Achilles prepared to return to battle and seal Hector's fate. Enraged, Achilles chased Hector around the walls of Troy, determined to avenge Patroclus' death. After several laps, the Trojan prince tried to stand his ground, but Achilles, faster and more skilled, overpowered him in combat. With a precise spear strike, Achilles pierced Hector's body. In his final moments, Hector pleaded with Achilles to return his body to his family, but the Greek hero, blinded by vengeance, refused. The fall of Troy's greatest champion marked the beginning of the city's end. In an act of brutality, Achilles tied Hector's corpse to his chariot and dragged it around the walls of Troy, humiliating him before his people and family. For days, he repeated this act, refusing to allow the Trojans to recover the body for proper burial rites. The elderly King Priam, devastated by his son's death, ventured into the Greek camp and knelt before Achilles. With tears in his eyes, He begged him to return Hector's body so he could give him a proper burial. Moved by his sorrow, Achilles finally relented. Before returning to battle, Achilles honored Patroclus with a grand funeral. In his memory, he organized funeral games and sacrificed Trojan prisoners at his tomb. His grief for his fallen friend did not fade, but fate still had one final tragic event in store for him. In the following days, Achilles fought against the Amazon queen Penthesilea. In a fierce confrontation, he killed her with his spear. But at the moment of her death, it is said that Achilles felt remorse, having recognized in her a noble and valiant warrior. Fate finally caught up with Achilles. During battle, Prince Paris, guided by the god Apollo, shot an arrow that struck his only vulnerable spot, his heel. The great warrior fell, and with him, the Greeks' hopes for an easy victory over Troy. The Achaeans, deeply affected, held a grand funeral for their greatest hero. His body was placed on a funeral pyre, and his ashes were mixed with those of his beloved friend Patroclus. With his death, the war neared its end, and although Troy would soon fall, Achilles' name would endure